a Fedora laptop, and I use KVM for
Looked like you were
virtualization.
using Virt Manager in there.
Yeah,
as
I use
well.
I use Virt Manager for all the
with the
front-end
KVM.
stuff. Yeah, but it's all KVM. It does do it. It makes some of this considerably simpler. And I use Fedora on my host. Besides the fact that I like Fedora, it keeps me in the Red Hat ecosystem. But it's newer, so I get new wireless drivers, and like everything works the way I like it to, as opposed to using CentOS on my host. If you were to use a host that CentOS works on, it would work exactly the same, basically. I'm running a newer version of GNOME. Other than that, everything else would be pretty much the same. If you want to do this on a different computer, say you want to use a Windows machine or a Mac as your host and use VirtualBox or VMware Workstation as your virtualization software, you can absolutely do that. All the fundamentals of this will work. Some of the implementation details will obviously be different. Your IP ranges will be different, how you create your VMs will be different, and one trick in creating subsequent VMs won't work on some of the other ones. But that's just a bonus of using KVM and keeping it all in.
So the CentOS Lab we're talking about is basically a virtual environment that you're building.
We're doing a virtual home lab, yes.
So you don't need another piece of hardware for this.
Correct. All of this is, and I'm going to get to the reasoning behind this during one of my
Okay.
downtime sections. So, the first thing we want to do is create our repository VM. We're going to go to Virt Manager, select a new VM. We're going to select local install media, because at least for the very first VM, you need to start from a downloaded ISO. So we're going to select forward on install local media. We're going to use ISO image, and then we'll have an option to choose local storage volume. That's when we're going to browse local, and we'll look in our local directories, and we'll navigate to the ISO for the distro. And I'm going to demonstrate all of this. If you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of talking and he hasn't done it yet, I'm going to do all of these steps right now. So we're going to create a new virtual machine. We're going to select local install media, and we're going to do choose media. We're going to do browse, and within this we're going to do browse local, and this will give us an option. Hey, look at that. I now have to remember where the thing is. Give me just 1 second. I thought we had it in here. Oh, here we go. Here's the directory where we have it. Huh. It's coming up differently than I expect. But if I select that ISO, you can browse to your, if you go to that browse and you do browse local, you can just browse your local directory for where your ISO file is. I don't remember where it is, but I was able to pick it off this list because I used it before, so I'm going to do that. So this is just, oh, actually I could look it up from here. So, oh, I put it in public. That's why I couldn't find it. I put it someplace clever. That's great. So I put it in public. So that's just the ISO file for Red Hat, and it's an early version, like 7.1. So, and you can tell you've got a good one when it says it allows you to choose the operating system that picks the right one for you. So, 1 gig of memory and 1 CPU are fine. You could probably, if you're in a constrained environment, you could probably get away with like 768 for the memory, but I've got enough that I'm going to go with 1 meg and 1 CPU. If you're going to make this your repo, generally want to give it a little extra space, so maybe 16 gigs, so we have enough room to copy the entire ISO into our VM. So a little more space than the default is probably a good idea for your repository machine. So we'll click forward, then we'll give it a name. Let's just call it, so it sorts to the top of the list, and we're going to let that start. We don't want to test. I'm going to go to install. And I've actually skipped a few slides ahead, and I apologize for that. So, we selected forward. This is the one with the pictures in it. So we just saw this where you create or locate your ISO media, select your ISO file. So, and I just went through all these steps quickly. Choose your memory and CPU options. 1 gig and 1 CPU is plenty. A little less you can even get away with. For your disk image, give it a little extra space for the repo machine, and then name your VM. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start selecting CentOS 7. We're already ready to go. Let's make this, doesn't need to be that big, true size to VM. So, select your language. English is probably going to be better because usually English is what they use for. This is sort of geared, just so you know the genesis of this. This came from many trial and error sessions of setting up sort of a study environment for Red Hat Red Hat 7 exams.
So are you setting up like a poor man's Satellite 7 right now, like, or
Well,
Satellite 6?
more basic than that. Again, without treading on NDAs, it's really helpful to be able to set up a basic local repo and know how to activate it. So you tell it what disk you want to install to. There will only be one available. Important details, we want to turn the network on by default. For some reason, it's not.
Wait, so installation, destination, you just,
Yeah, there's only one disk available. Just make sure it's selected and click.
and you just automatically
Click done.
configure partitioning, you just let
Yeah,
it
just let it do the partitions wherever it wants. It'll set up a few partitions. For software selection, what we want to do is we want to do infrastructure servers, that we have the option of FTP server available. Because we're going to set up our local repo as FTP. You can do all this stuff afterwards, but this makes life easy. Again, learn from
Anything
the hard
else?
road.
Anything
Are you,
else
are you following along as we're going?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Or anything else like system admin tools, or no?
You shouldn't need, if we do this, you can install all that stuff later,
Okay.
which is the way you want to do it. So we hit done. I think that's all we need to do. Let me check my
Network and hostname, you're not going to set that up? Or you have it?
turn network on. The host name is irrelevant. You can name it if you want.
Turn it on, do you configure it to be available to everybody, or you just turn it on?
Again, I simply turn it on. Everything else I leave it default.
Roger.
So we select our installation destination, which is the disk. Allow the installer to do that automatically. Select infrastructure server and FTP server. This will save you a bunch of work later. Network and host name, make sure network is enabled. That's all. Like I say, it's fine with localhost, local domain. If you want to name it to make your life easier, you can certainly do that. But it's not a requirement to make this work. So there we go. I'm showing the FTP server. Then click begin installation, and then we do introduction stuff while we have 5 minutes or so to wait for this. Oh, while you're doing this, you want to set your root password. Nope. You want to click in the box first so that it works.
So just quickly, on the network and hostname configuration, there is a configure button there where you can say, under general, make this available to all users, or you just don't deal with that? Like,
I don't deal with that.
Okay.
What I would say is it's not necessary to configure any of that to make this work.
Okay. All right, so let's begin installation. We'll set a root password.
Okay, this is interesting. My keyboard doesn't seem to be going through. Of course, that's what I would always want, is for things to be interesting while I'm doing it live. I'm going to see if I could do this with no password. It'll probably ask me on the rebound. I'm going to hope when I reset that VM that it comes to its senses.
That'd be true for user too, otherwise the only user you have is root.
With no password.
Right.
Which, since this is local, is actually...
No, understand, yeah, but that's more of a function of your laptop setup there than,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you want no password on the root?
No, he
You
just,
should set a password on root.
he
If we-
was having trouble with his keyboard.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, I'm having a keyboard issue. So, so what you want to do, so just to introduce myself again for the new session, I'm Bob Murphy. I'm a Linux system administrator. I am pursuing my RHCE, and that's where a lot of this setting up a lab quickly, the genesis of creating this came from. I've been using Linux for a long time personally, though, over 20 years, started with Slackware. And you know, this presentation has really evolved from working on my RHCSA and RHCE and going through and being able to set up a local environment. I'll talk about that more in a few minutes. So we've got a couple of minutes here. I'm hoping when we reset this that the keyboard works the way it should.
I like to use Virt Manager a lot as well to test things and such. For the disk, I found it useful to use the QEMU-IMG utility
Okay,
to create a QCal2 file.
okay,
And I tell it I want to make it be, 100 gigs or something. But with a QCal2 file, it's not going to be 100 gigs on your disk unless you put 100 gigs into it. But so when I say my target directory is, I say manually select, and then I point it to that QCal2 file that I created.
you could certainly do it. Are you saying
And-
that you're getting sparse disks then, where it doesn't?
No.
populate
I
around?
know. I go, first of all, I create it first.
Right.
I go to command line and go to my folder, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head the syntax for it, QEMU-IMG, and then the syntax would be you would create a disk that would be, something like CentOS.QCal2, but then you would say the size would be, 250 gig. Well,
Right.
the resulting file it creates initially is not 250 gig. It's way, way smaller than that.
Right.
But that makes your virtual machine think it has a 250 gig disk. And yes, it would put 250 gigs in it if it had that to put in it. But if you don't use it, you don't take up that space on your hard disk there on your machine. Whereas if you do create the initial hard disk of that size, it's going to take that.
Oh, okay. So
So-
what you want to do is you want to create the smaller disk.
Yes, you
Yeah.
create the smaller disk, but you make it think it has much more.
Right.
And so it has the headroom of storage if it needs it.
Right.
But if you don't use it, it's not gobbling up space that's not being used on your hard
Yeah,
disk.
that's not a bad idea. I usually don't.
That's
do it
why
that
I really love the QCal2 disk format for that reason. It's very useful.
Should we be using Mosaic Lab or Mosaic Guest?
Let me check and see what I've got here. I think it is Mosaic Lab, and Mosaic Lab is the SSID up there, and you see the password that's written. It's marked where it's case sensitive, up just behind you if you need to see it.
I got it.
Up there, and yes, that's it's not Guest, it's Lab in here, and I'm just saying that on the air, but nobody can do anything with it. You don't,
Well, unfortunately,
because it's broadcast anyway.
I'm having a keyboard issue, so I hope that if I reboot this machine, that it actually completed the installation and lets me log in.
Oh right.
I don't see any choice right now other than. Let's see.
Are you ready? Is it ready to finish?
Yep, and it says set your root password, and then you can reboot, and it won't.
Oh, it won't let. Oh.
I'm not sure why. 'Cause the keyboard works fine over here. For some reason, it's not capturing my keystrokes.
Is there any way to bring up a virtual keyboard somewhere in there?
within this?
Vert Manager. I can't remember whether
No,
it'll
I
let
don't
you
think
do
it
that.
does. No,
Um,
I'm gonna reboot and hope for the best here. Because even passing through the Alt F1, that didn't work either.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping.
Let's give it a try.
You know what? I'm gonna shut this one down while I'm at it because I don't really need it. Okay, that's a good sign at least.
Yeah, that is. 'Cause now it's pulling from your.
Yeah. Hopefully the install finished though.
Exactly.
Okay. I have no login.
And it's also not serving up a GUI.
Right. Well, I didn't tell it to install a GUI, so
Oh, all right. Okay.
I accidentally bugged out of there. So what I'm gonna have to, I'm just gonna start over here.
You can still point it to the same disk resource you said initially. Just tell it to overwrite it.
Nah, you know what? That won't save me any time really,
Yeah.
because it's gonna do the whole thing. So I'm gonna start over, unfortunately, but I'm gonna do this quick.
Right. Yours is running.
Yeah.
All right. Are you using virtual notes? Oh, that's right, because you're on a Mac.
Sorry about that. It's a weird, weird keyboard issue. Let's see how quick we can get through this. So I'm going to do some of the later explanation here. So part of the question with this is, why are you doing it this way as opposed to just updating your machine? So there's a couple different reasons that I wanted to set this into motion this way. I unclicked it. It's awesome. It's good to do things too quickly. When you're doing certain tests, for example, like the Red Hat tests, they usually want you on one version, and you can look this up online on the Red Hat site. They say, we're doing you know, the RHCE or the RHCSA test on Red Hat 7.0, not 7.4, not 7.6, 7.0, period. And you want the environment, including any potential quirks or issues, to be in line with that, so that way when you get into that test environment, you're seeing the exact same thing you would see with them. When we set up the repos the way we're setting them up here, you're going to have a server and several workstations or other servers that all pull back from this repo, which will be the original ISO that you set up. So if you noticed when I installed this, it was Red Hat 7-1611, which I believe is 7.2. And I want to keep the entire system on that. So if I do a, you know, install some package, I don't want it to pull in the latest packages. I want it to pull one in the packages in line with exactly what I have here. Because you don't want to have your HTTP server to be the latest version and your supporting libraries to be older ones, and you don't want it to pull in all of it because you're slowly going to update the system past where you want to be. The way this works is we're going to set up this local repository so that all the machines pull only from here, so they will get all their packages from that repo. So if you update something, everything will stay in line with each other, and you will stay on the same patch level as everything else. But if you, nothing will advance beyond that, because you're going to tell it, ignore the Red Hat repos or the CentOS repos, only use this repo. And being able to set this up is helpful. Oh, you know what? I can check now and see if I can set the password. Ah, good. I don't know what happened there that I lost my focus. And I typically create a user, but that's certainly not mandatory. Things went a little off the rails when I have no keyboard. So this should all work fine. The second reason I wanted to set it up like this is because I was working on some of my stuff and I wanted to study for RHCSA and Linux Plus and some other stuff. So you sit down at a place like a sandwich place, it's free Wi-Fi, okay, I can get on, I can set up my web server, I can do all of my stuff so I can practice the next section. So I've got my book, my downloaded PDF of the book, I'm all ready to go. I go yum install HTTPD, and it says no network found. Then you look, oh, there's Wi-Fi, but beyond the Wi-Fi, there's no internet beyond there, so their Wi-Fi is down. What do you do now? I'm stuck, I can't do anything. If you have this local repo set up on your machine, now, even if the rest of the world, you get no internet, you're on a desert island, you could sit down, you can create new VMs, you can install software on the VMs. Again, everything stays at the same patch level, so you don't need to call out to the wider network.
It's almost better to have all your repos local to you for that reason.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it just speeds things up amazingly.
That too.
And
yeah.
it speeds things up. You don't have to wait for network. Now, except for the fact that I had to do this twice, this goes rather quickly when this is going along here on post-installation setup. This is where if I either am unplugged or I'm on my slower, older laptop, this section takes forever. It just sits there and chugs away for a while. Plugged in and on the good laptop, this will go a little bit quickly. So for that reason alone, I wanted to have all these repos local. You know, I thought the same thing. Oh, I'll just download off the network if I need stuff. What's the big deal? You know, I'll just adapt to the changes. No, it's really helpful to be able to have everything local. Again, everything's at the same patch level. Everything's local. Everybody can talk to each other on the same terms. Everything works. So very useful. Have you sped along to the next step, or are you waiting on me here?
I switched. So when you said setting up a local repository, I switched from NAT to NAT network with VirtualBox, but it screwed up not bringing up the Ethernet interface. So
It's funny.
I'm just reinstalling
The
it.
only time I used VirtualBox, I was running Mint on my old Mac laptop, oddly enough, but I was running Mint on it. I couldn't get the VMs to talk to each other for some reason. I set them all up for local.
So they have this. So host only means your VMs can talk to your host.
Oh, but they can't talk to each other?
Can't talk to each other.
I might have
That's
had
why
that
they
set.
have NAT network as an option
Okay.
instead of NAT. NAT network gives you NAT, so you get
There's
out.
a bridge
but
between
they
the
can
two
talk,
of them. Yeah.
They can talk across
Yeah.
the VMs.
See, I actually would have been happier with don't even have a NAT. Talk to the host and talk to each other, and don't even talk to the outside world. I don't want you going out there anyway. But this prevents that anyway. Here we go, writing network configuration, and ITRAM-FS, almost done.
All right, so I'm catching up with you. Infrastructure server FTP.
Are your separate VMs on the same network segment,
Yes.
IP-wise.
Yes.
So it's easier to have them talk to each other that way if they
Yes.
know if you know the addresses.
Yes,
Which you do.
but VirtualBox didn't let them talk to each other, which I thought was really weird. So, okay, so we're good to go. We can reboot. This machine will boot up really nice and fast because it's simple, no GUI,
Mhm.
takes a few seconds. Then you want to log in, and then we'll start going through the steps.
Is there any way to make, yes there is, you can make the text bigger on your VM?
On your VM, I don't think there is.
I'm just thinking about the screen
Okay,
broadcast also.
let me see what I can do. Let me go through the slides, and then let
Just a
me see if I
question.
can make that
Sure,
bigger.
okay.
Oh, you know what I can do? I can just SSH into it, and I can make that text bigger. That I can do. The console, I don't know if I can.
And if you can read that from back where you are, you have wonderful eyes.
Yeah, the text part. So we're going to set up the FTP server, and like I said, I'm going to SSH into it, and
Got
then
it. Then you
I'll
can
be
do it.
able to
Yeah, right.
enlarge the
Mhm.
text so you can
Cool.
see it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to describe all these steps first, and then we're going to do. Actually, I'm going to do the last step first.
So
and we
these
get
are
the-
actually commands you type in.
You must type in to make all this work. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our
Oh, yes,
FTP
start
server,
enable.
which we installed ahead of time, which is much easier to do than digging this stuff out of the ISO. System control start VSFTPD. System control enable VSFTPD, which means it will restart the next time the system
So when
starts
you
up.
told it to install an FTP server, it's VSFTP is what
Yes,
it
that is the
installed.
default FTP server on a Red Hat or CentOS system. Check it with that, we don't necessarily have to do. Then you need to set your firewall to allow other VMs to connect through the firewall to your server. So you're going to do firewall -command --add service FTP and then space -- permanent. So that way that recurs the next time.
And
you
all
do
that
it.
stuff you have to do is root.
Yeah, all of this is root. Yeah. Enable firewall changes. You do firewall -command -reload unless you're planning on rebooting, in which case you don't have to bother. So let's go through those steps. Let me log in because I need to get the IP. So just squinty vision for one more minute, and then I'll log in. Oh, and for all of my demo VMs, that the password is password, just to make life easier.
Yeah, I use Red Hat.
Yeah. So our IP address is 122.88, so that could be useful. We'll do SSH, awesome security here. Root SSH is enabled. Thanks, Red Hat. 192.168.122.188. Oh. I
The
should put-
168, right?
Yeah, I should put all the numbers in, right? Okay. Yes, and I will enlarge this font now.
And are you using screen while you do this?
At the moment, I am not.
That would be an awesome tie-in to the entire day if you would do that. But you could though.
You've shown me
You
my
could.
missed opportunity of the day. Oh, actually, I haven't typed a single command yet. Oh, screen isn't installed. I can't do it until after I install the repo. Okay, so we'll do system control, enable, VSFTPD. Okay, I did them in the reverse order from there, but it doesn't
No
really
problem.
matter.
You can still
We'll do start.
right.
Doesn't really matter.
Let's see status, make sure it's
And
running.
we could do status if you'd like to see it. Status.
Yeah,
Is
see,
that-
make sure it's running.
Is that big enough on your
Yeah,
thing
you're
there?
good.
This should be a little better. So there we go.
Cool,
It's
good.
running. So then we're going to do firewall command.
Oh, you missed the W.
Yeah. If you're all detail oriented, and isn't it that's CMD? We'll do enable.
Right.
Add service equals FTP. And we'll do permanent.
And reload.
Notice the command completion works on most of this. That's a
I
good
love
way to
that
know.
tells-
That's a good way to know if you did it right.
I love that utility tells
Yeah,
you
And
success.
using the
That's nice
permanent
about
flag changes the configuration file, but you actually haven't changed the firewall until you reload.
until we reload, and that was in the instructions as well.
Now, if you
So-
did the add service without the permanent, it would add it right now, but it would be ephemeral.
But then it
until you
would
reboot
go
it.
away when you
Yeah.
reboot. I'm going long term. I'd rather it not work. Reboot out of confusion, and then all of a sudden it works. Okay.
It would be
that's
nice
better.
if permanent also added it and changed the config file.
Or if there were
Yes.
another flag. If there were another flag, you dash now.
Exactly.
So that way
Exactly,
you do both.
right,
You know,
exactly.
that, like there might be a use case where you want to change it but not yet. Oh, yeah, okay, I could put another command flag to also reload would be handy.
That'll be the next version.
Okay, so we should have our FTP site up and running now, but there's yet nothing interesting on it. So we're going to go to the next section in here. Oh, the nice thing is when I don't use the console, I can flip between my screens easier too. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the files for that repository to our VM. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to View Details in our console for KVM. We're going to mount that CD-ROM to the VM, because after it's done installing,
That's
it
why
doesn't-
the FTP was so critical to have it loaded, because you're using it to put your local repositories into your VM.
No, I'm actually using it to allow other machines to connect to that local repository. I'm copying it local from CD. The FTP isn't into play yet. But I do FTP first because it sets up the directory where I want to put all the stuff. I don't have to create it and then worry about permissions. I let it create it, and then I copy everything in. That's why I do it in this sequence. Again,
Good
you learn
clarification,
by,
yeah.
You learn by doing it the hard way. I'm showing you the easy way. So we'll do, we're going to mount that CD to an arbitrary place. I'm going to do root temp because we'll be in root, and then we'll mount it. We'll rsync all the files over, and then we'll have a couple more minutes to wait. So we'll do make
So
directory.
you're rsyncing
temp.
it over, not?
Yeah, I use rsync instead of copies. That way you can see something as it goes by.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
I use rsync all the time.
Yeah,
I love it.
So we'll make dir temp. We'll do mount. Oh, I didn't do a step. So let's open our console. We'll do details. We're going to mount a CD-ROM, and conveniently it will be the same place we found it before, so we can find it easily. So now we hit apply. If you don't hit apply, things don't happen the way you want them to. Mount dev CD-ROM to temp. This is good. It says mount write protected, read only. So we're going to do rsync -avhp, which gives us verbose and progress bars, so that way there's interesting things to see while this is happening. While I'm doing a live demo, so that way something's happening on the screen. And we'll do temp/to var ftp pub. Just to make life easy, we're going to put it in the public directory.
Which is the folder that you had, that was created when you did the...
with all the right permissions.
Yes, exactly.
Again, you learn by doing it the hard way, and then I show you guys the easy way. You set all FTP up, everything is all in place for when you go to do this copy. So now we're copying files over. Okay, I already discussed this when we did our second OS reload, and I apologize for that. It allows for easy setup and rebuilding. It keeps our stability in the OS. We will always be on the same level. You want to have one VM on a different level from this one. You want to have libraries split because
Oh,
you
yeah, no
upgraded
binary
some things.
incompatibility and all
Right.
that kind
This,
of problem.
this we're staying all in the same
Yeah.
level, and since these machines aren't really talking to the outside world, it's okay.
Who cares?
That we're staying behind if you're being focused in this. Now, if you're setting up a demonstration for a web server that you're going to have on the actual internet, you should install and stay on the CentOS
Security
repo
updates are
and
critical,
do a,
yeah.
and do a full update and do full. But for this purpose, we want to stay on an older version. And the fact that we don't need the network to install new software in this situation is really helpful. Even if you're doing something that's not heavily networked, but you're doing, let's do the iSCSI stuff. You need to install stuff for that. If you have your repo, you don't need an outside network for something that inherently doesn't need to be talking to the outside world anyway. So, this is handy.
This looks like a process born of experience.
Yes. Okay, so our copy is complete.
It's done, yeah.
Oh, and I'm going to answer another question that I was asked before. They said, why don't you just mount the ISO to it? That way you don't need the space in your VM for that. That's great. I've had SE Linux issues that go way deeper than this. This is the quick and easy way to make this work, by copying the files over. Because if you mount your CD to that mount point in pub, the SE Linux contexts aren't right for everything, and things don't
It can't
work
copy
as
the
well.
labels over to the read-only CD.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why. That's one of the reasons I do it. Someone asked, and I went to try to do it. I said, that's why I did it this way, because
That's a use case you wouldn't naturally think of.
right. Well, again, if you're studying for the Red Hat exams, SE Linux must always be on and enabled. So, the quick way to get around this would say, well, just leave SE Linux off on this particular VM. But I like to keep it strict, so that way you're keeping in the mindset
And enforcing,
of
because that's the world you're going to be living in when you...
when you
And
do
you're
the
not doing
exam.
anything specifically with the labels, you're just letting it handle the labels for you when you copy it over.
Exactly. But if you mount the CD, that doesn't work, and things don't work the way you
Because
expect
even
them to.
RestoreCon won't work or ChangeCon
Because it can't write.
Because it's a read-only device, yes. Okay, so now we've got our server VM, we've got FTP installed, we've opened our firewall ports, presumably, if everything works the way it's supposed to. Now what we want to do is tell this server, so we're going to start with this server. This will be the first server that works with this repo. We're going to tell this server get all of your information from your own FTP repo. So we not only set it up to do its own updates from itself, we also test the whole system from itself. It's easier to troubleshoot before you go to the outside world. So, to create a local repo with the Yum system, of course things are going to be different with DNF. That's a problem for the future. We're dealing with Red Hat 7 for now. Where your repos are in a directory called etc yum.repos.d. Now, right now, if you go in there, there's a bunch of CentOS ones in there. We don't want any of those. So what I'm going to do is we're going to move we're going to move all the CentOS repos. I move them to root, just in case you want them later.
And
So,
actually, there's an important thing. A lot of the configuration files under etc have a .d directory to put special, and the reason they do that is the main file will pull all those in when it's read as part of its configuration, but if you patch the system, it can patch the main file and not screw up any of
right.
the ones, so you don't get all those like modified little marker files and things like that, where you gotta go and clean it all
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
it allows you to separate all the configurations, why
Yeah.
they do that.
But this does take all of the repos out and makes things nice and simple for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new network repo. I put edit to not get into editor wars, but I'm going to use Vim to create a new file called network.repo. And these are the 4 lines that you absolutely must have to make a repo work correctly. Okay? You need the name of your repo in brackets. And then apparently for the Department of Redundancy department, you need name equals network, which needs to be the same name. You explain to me why that needs to be that way. I can't explain it. So we've got 2 names. This third line is the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. Base URL equals. Now for our example, we're going to do ftp:// our IP address, which if anyone recalls is 192.168.122.188 on my example. Oh, it might have changed. Oh no, this new one is the one that works. And then /pub. You see the little machinations in my head. Sorry to expose everyone to that. /pub, because that's where we put all the files from the CD. Oh, I should have unmounted the CD, but if we reboot that all goes away anyway. And then GPG check equals 0, because we don't want to bother with the GPG signatures for now for this. We know we copied them right off the CD, so we're okay with that. And then save and quit, and then to test it, we're going to do yum clean all, which gets rid of all the other files so it doesn't try to pull from the CentOS repositories. Of course, since we've never run them, I don't think it'll happen, but if that was an issue, you do yum clean all, yum install FTP, or I'll do yum install screen, just to do the throwback we talked about. I've used that example before too. And then if you want to just if the yum install FTP works, it means it worked. And you could do FTP localhost. That's why you do FTP for that. So let's go through the steps. So we're going to do cd etc yum.reposd. And you see we got all kinds of CentOS stuff in there. We're going to do move * to the root directory, just in case we want them later. So they're not deleted. They're sitting in root now. So what we're going to do is, we're going to accidentally hit the keypad and highlight half the screen. So we're going to do vim network.repo. So our steps were network in brackets.
Your colors are hard to read.
Better?
Better.
Okay, we'll do name equals network. We'll do base URL equals ftp:// 192.168.122.188. Okay, 122 is the default local network under 192.168 for the Class C local
Yeah, for KDM.
subnet.
Yeah.
122 is the one they default to. If you have changed that at some point, or if you're using a different version, your IP will be different. But if you get the IP from your repo, you're in the right ballpark. And then we do /pub, because that's the public folder that the FTP server sets up by default for everybody to be able to read from. And then we do GPG check equals 0. Now, if you happen to forget that last one, it'll tell you, like when you go to update a file, if it looks like it's going to work, but then it says, oh my God, I can't do GPG verification, you forgot that line. So we've saved that out. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do yum clean all. Now it flushes out all the old stuff. Again, there's nothing there. I don't think that'll do that. So let's do yum. Wow, I need to type it right. Yum install screen. Look at that. So what it did was, because we didn't put localhost, it actually goes out to the network. So now we know our FTP server is doing what it's supposed to. We'll do. We could do the FTP client, and then we could do FTP localhost, anonymous, no password, and you can see if we go to pub, all of our files from the CD are sitting right there in our FTP server. But because we told Yum, hey, go to this FTP site, it pulls this in. So the only thing that could still be wrong is if we biffed the firewall somehow, if I did a typo in the firewall, because we're doing it from this server, I'm on the inside already. You know,
Yeah, the local host won't check the
yeah,
file.
the installation request is coming from inside the house. So
So I guess in my mind, like, I would probably just install a local satellite as VM, like a local satellite server, and then use it.
do you want to take time to do that during your exam?
No, don't use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we know we've got at least the vast majority of all the pieces are working correctly. So now let's create a new VM. Now I'm going to do this the way that takes slightly longer, but is actually cooler. So what we're going to do is, instead of installing from the CD this time, let's do a network install. We're going to do the network install.
But you're logged onto the VM right now.
This is an SSH session to
Into
the
the
VM.
into the VM. Yeah,
So
so
you're
you're
creating
logged.
another VM.
I can exit out. I'm going to create a new VM. Okay? And what I'm going to use for my URL is,
Oh.
I'm going to install directly from our repo.
And your other VM still running, so
That other VM
FTP server's there to serve up those files.
Our repo is still running in the background.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is, one of the features of doing this on KVM as opposed to VirtualBox, so if you guys are doing this...
I'm doing it on KVM.
Oh, you are? Okay, so you can do this trick as well. Sorry, I can't make that bigger, unfortunately. You will have to install from the CD again and then set up your repo. With this one, we can install right from our other machine. So every machine
And then
in
it
the
automatically
future-
sets up the repo to point to that machine.
What's that?
It automatically.
No, it
sets-
doesn't. We still
Oh,
have
you
to set up the
do it,
repo.
okay.
But we can install right from it. So we'll do forward. That looks like it detected, but it went away real quickly. Okay, so this time we'll leave the default because we don't need that extra space. So we'll do... So we'll just make this a workstation. See if it worked. That's looking pretty good. It found boot files. So this one we happen to be installing directly from, and unfortunately I don't think I can make this bigger.
If you're in GNOME, you should be able to double click that top
Will it
part.
give you, is it gonna give you the,
No, that part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
small
it's
window.
just- yeah, it's
The
so
text
small.
all stays the same. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Size to. Oh, hold on a second here. There we go. So now we're installing. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Now, okay, it's marginally bigger. So now we can do our install of this one directly from our repo. It takes a little bit longer because now we're doing twice as many disk accesses, unfortunately, but it's not horrible. So this one I'm going to do minimal install. Notice network is automatically enabled since we're installing over the network. They really couldn't shut that down. So I'm leaving everything exactly the
installation destination?
But it's
Yeah, that's
network
fine. Oh,
inside.
Did I turn it off again? Why am I doing that today? That's so weird. Okay.
But the network is traveling, just traversing inside your own.
Yeah, it
Yes.
should be very
Space.
fast. It's not pulling anything over the network. It's just,
Or the network it's pulling from is internal to his.
Right, but now I'm still making
yeah.
it do an extra disk access and an extra network thing. Well, actually, the disk access it would have to
so
do.
for the RHC, you're given a RHEL instance and you're just creating VMs? Is that what you're doing, or?
You don't create the VMs. They give you the VMs.
Okay.
You don't need to actually create them. I don't want to cross an NDA line, so I'm going to stop now. So we're creating our second machine now. So we've got our, now we know for sure that our repo machine has the firewall holes active the way they should be because this installation is working over it, so obviously it's connecting over the network correctly. So you can see this is going to install, and then we'll recreate that network. So there's two ways we can do this. Let me go back to the slides. Let me see how far ahead of the slides I've gotten here. So let's see, we did all of that. There's a page showing a successful FTP install. Oh, I'm not that far ahead. So we went to the virtual machine manager, selected new VM as before, but instead of local CD, we did a network install. So I typed that in with 188 for repo. That's pretty much it. We had time for questions. So we still installing? We're still installing. Any questions up till now? Before I get ahead of myself?
So you have 2 machines now, virtual machines you can work with?
Right.
One's acting
And then you
as
can
a
keep creating.
package
You could
server,
keep
the
creating
other
more
one's-
if you want. And then after we do one more step, this machine will only look to the repo.
Oh,
for
so
any
the first
updates.
one you set up was for the purpose of having it be a package server.
Exactly.
The next one, the one you're building now, is the one you're going to be working in.
Right. That one we can blow up and we can recreate it this easily. Now, theoretically, if you wanted to save some disk space, you could delete the ISO at this point. Because your repo server has this, unless you do presentations
And
with
it's
this and
running,
you need the
yeah.
ISO around.
Right.
Well, yeah, you would have to restart it
Yeah.
when you want to pull from it, but it's always
But it's
there.
still there. It's not going
Yeah.
to go delete it from the. It
Yeah.
won't leave the disk.
And you can create new VMs from it, new fresh VMs that aren't clones of other machines directly from it.
Because it's a repo server now.
Yep. Yep. And that's where this workstation that's installing right now is coming from that other.
And it also keeps you, the use case you had earlier, you want it static because you want it to be conformed to this specific
Right.
version.
We want to keep all the versions the same.
Yeah.
And like I say, the side benefit is you need no network access to install new software. And of course, that software is limited to what comes on the Red Hat CD, but that's the world you want to live in for these kind of.
It also gives you some security protection because not being on the network.
Yeah. See,
An
right-
external network.
See, now all the time we've been doing this, I never connected to the Wi-Fi. I haven't had a network for any of this so far. Because I've done this demonstration in enough places, you don't tempt the demo gods and rely on network access. That's a terrible idea, because they will always get you if you try to do that. I've done this
So it's
demonstration.
this, I'm sorry, the double disk access is what's causing us to be a little bit slow.
Actually, probably not this step. This is when it's doing its internal stuff. It's compiling the new kernel, or installing the new kernel packages. It's creating a new initram FS. It's doing all of those initial setup steps for it when it gets to post-installation setup.
It depends
tasks.
how many CPUs you give it.
Yeah, I only
You
gave
gave
it
it
one.
one,
So,
so-
yeah.
Yeah.
One unlimited RAM. So.
So it's not a disk I/O that's really limiting it. It's processor resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's our thing. Yeah, I've stopped pulling from it, so it's actually, I should have done this before. So I'm logged out, but this is our repo server. The workstation will be done in a minute, and then when we reboot, we're going to put the same network file in this one that we had in the other one. There's 2 ways you could do this. Once you've been beaten into the ground like I am, it's quicker just to use Vim and recreate it from scratch.
Instead
If
of
you-
SCP or?
or you could SCP it from your other one, because that's one of the reasons I used to do 2 different ones. I used to tell it, oh, do local file, do, base URL equals file, and I would pull it right from the file system. But I said, well, if I make it pull from its own FTP server,
Then you just copy.
then I can use that same file on every system in the. So let me do it your way. You've already seen me do it by hand, and we have that on the slide. Instead of doing it that way, oh, you know what? I need the IP from that one before I'm going to log in. So instead of recreating the file like we did here, oops, let's go back. Instead of recreating the file, which here are our steps to recreate the file from scratch, we're just going to SCP it from our repo machine and put it where it belongs in the workstation machine.
Or you were using rsync before.
You
Yeah,
could
but
use,
just
you could
copy
use
the
rsync.
single file.
Yeah.
Or you could do an SCP-R and get everything if you want. Like it's just
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, with this, you know what, like I say, the rsync was more so things happen on the screen, because when you do copy and nothing happens and everybody's looking at you, you go, I sure hope everything's working the way it should. At
Doesn't
least
have
with
to-
rsync, you
yeah.
get to see things go by. Okay, things are copying. It takes some of that tension out of is anything actually happening or not? SCP is quick for this, so that's fine. So let's go. Do root.
You're going to send out a link to the slides too.
Yes.
122.185. Oh, it's weird that they're coming fairly sequential. Oh, look at that. I closed my only window. So we see we're on the new workstation machine. So let's do cd etc yum repos d. We'll do move all of this to root. So we moved all the CentOS files. So if we do all the CentOS files were there, we just moved all those off to root. So now we've got nothing in here. So let's do scp.
That has to be colon slash, it's,
Did I miss one?
yeah. you missed
Yes,
it.
I did. Thank you.
Mhm.
I believe they want 2 slashes too.
No, just one. You just one slash because you're referring to the directory after the colon. Boom.
Boom. So now we have the network repo from that one. So
And
if
it's
we-
identical to the other one because it was just looping back to itself, so you're good to go.
Yep, yum clean all, and then we do yum install screen, NMC, and FTP, and the best browser in the world, elinks. And look at how nice and quick all that installs with no network access. And then we can do, we have all of our stuff local and easy. Did I knock myself out of there? Oh, I activated the thing there. So now we've got a new machine, so if we need to do the next section, again, I have no network on here. If I need yum install HTTPD,
You got it. No.
yeah, I dropped an L. So I can install a web server on here and set that up. Now, something to keep in mind, if you really want to set up web servers, you can also set up the repo as a web server if you wish. I found FTP to be simpler, so I do that right off the bat.
So on the machine acting as your sort of poor man's satellite, you could do a repo sync and pull stuff from the official stuff, can't you?
It's not quite that simple,
Okay.
because it'll update your machine. What you need to do is use yum downloader, download the files, put them in your repo, and then there's a command to update the repo, because there are metadata files in the repo
Got you.
that tell you
The
what packages
metadata.
are
So
there.
you just can't pull the packages.
Yeah,
you gotta
it's-
keep the
You
metadata.
can do all of that. It's just not as simple as you
At
said.
that point, just run satellite, like it's.
If you really want to run satellite.
How would the command make
Satellite's,
cache?
satellite's quite a production though. There's a lot going on there. It's not.
I
Oh,
know.
just run
I
satellite.
thought it got easier. I thought it got easier with 6.5. But
I hope so, because I'm going to be upgrading to it soon. You got a question?
Yes, yum make cache. What would that do for you?
It basically means if nothing, and that'd be excellent. in
You're
this-
talking about updating the repo information,
right.
and make cache would be involved in that.
What I think that's just going to do is speed up your network access. And for this production, I don't think it's going to buy you much. Like, say you were going to do a bunch of operations to the network.
Because you're not pulling something from
Yeah,
the
you're not pulling it
outside.
from very far. It's all
Yeah.
on the local machine.
Yeah.
So even if you get it from the repo every time, it's
Big
not gonna
deal.
be that slow.
Yeah.
And the other thing in this environment is it's not going to change. So if you ever,
It's static
if
anyway,
the
so
cache
maybe-
ever updates, it's always going to be up to date. So it's
So how are you preparing for your RHC, if you don't mind me asking? Like, you doing the regular Red Hat courses, or are you looking at the books? And
let's do that after we're done streaming. Any other questions regarding this? So we now have our complete self-contained Linux network with local repositories. We can do all of this software installation with no network connection whatsoever.
that's awesome.
All new VMs get their software strictly from the local repo, not the internet. So if you have no internet, you have no problems.
Because you started with CentOS 7.6 or whatever, that's what you have.
Yeah, it stays on there. Actually, it's probably older than that. Let's do
Yeah.
The version.
Or cat proc version. Yeah.
7.3. I
That's
think.
it. They keep the name of the file Red Hat release, even though that's fun.
Yeah. They have to take the logos out because the
Yeah.
logos are copyrighted. Let's see. Okay, so the slides are available. You asked where the slides were. GitHub.com/murphnj/ourlab.
Make a note of that.
You can contact me. I'll give everybody my email after we're offline. If you want to contact me on the Fediverse, which if you guys want to chat about the Fediverse afterwards, I'll be more than happy to do that too. I am at murph@fostodon.org.
What's the Fediverse?
Oh, we'll get into that. Do we want that online or offline?
Right offline.
No, let's do that offline.
We'll do that offline. Okay. So we'll talk about the Fediverse later. Anybody on YouTube, there's lots of videos on Mastodon and the Fediverse that explain it much
Oh,
better. than
that's
I'm
the
going to.
Mastodon system you're
Yeah.
talking. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's your clue right there.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stop streaming.
So you asked how I'm